our goal here today is to kind of get through the intimidation factors so that you can feel prepared to do your first ride. Hopefully we'll get you feeling like you want to do that. It's gonna really be kind of casual. We want to give you some hands-on, learn how to take a pulse, learn how to trot your horse out, know what you need to do when you present your horse, when you come to a ride and you present your horse to a vet. Because I know for me it was pretty overwhelming and nobody was really there to tell me what to do. So we're hoping to get you through that. It's going to be a lot of, like I said, hands-on. Please ask questions, and at the end of the day, we're going to be talking about conditioning and any other things that you have specific questions on. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris and Marty. They're going to kind of explain the difference between a limited distance ride, competitive trail ride, and endurance ride. And this is my husband Doug. We own Run Along Farm. But this is also sponsored by AUDRA and UMECRA. AUDRA is the Arabian Horse Distance Riding Association, and UMECRA is the Upper Midwest Endurance and Competitive Trail Riding Association. We have a bunch of handouts. We don't want to overwhelm anybody, so our goal here today is to kind of get through the intimidation factors so that you can feel prepared to do your first ride. Hopefully we'll get you feeling like you want to do that. It's gonna really be kind of casual. We want to give you some hands-on, learn how to take a pulse, learn how to trot your horse out, know what you need to do when you present your horse, when you come to a ride and you present your horse to a vet. Because I know for me it was pretty overwhelming and nobody was really there to tell me what to do. So we're hoping to get you through that. It's going to be a lot of, like I said, hands-on. Please ask questions, and at the end of the day, we're going to be talking about conditioning and any other things that you have specific questions on. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris and Marty. They're going to kind of explain the difference between a limited distance ride, competitive trail ride, and endurance ride. So with that, I'm sorry. Bathrooms are in the house.
Yeah, the most important thing.
Yeah, the most important thing. We don't have a restroom out here. If you go into the house, through the kitchen.
I'm going to start, and we go off this handout. This was part of a presentation we've done before. But basically, it lists the types of people who might enjoy distance riding. If you like spending a lot of time with your horse, you like being out on the trail, like camping, then this is probably the sport for you.
It's not a sport for you if you want to stay clean all the time and are upset about being dirty.
Yeah, you can get pretty dirty. But it's if you like camping and if you like being on the trails, and you'll really enjoy this sport. One of the nice things about this sport is you can have all sorts of goals. People come into this sport with different goals. Some to be the first to win, but you can also have other goals. Like there's a part of the event in which your horse gets evaluated as being in the best condition at the end of the ride. You can have a goal of trying to accumulate as many of those as possible. You can have a goal of trying to just not necessarily win, but accumulate miles. And there's awards for that as well. So there's all kinds of different awards and different goals that you can set for yourself. And what's kind of fun at the beginning of the season, we'll all kind of decide, well, what are we going to go for this season? You can set your personal goal and just kind of go for it. And it makes it very flexible and unique. We're going to go over the events, and we're kind of going to go from the in the opposite direction, in the sense that we're going to go from the longest event, because that's probably the easiest to understand, to the shortest events. And we'll go with that, and we're going to talk, you have some of it here, but I also want to point out that Linda did a little chart there that talks about the differences in the events. I'm just going to give you pretty much an overview. But one of the things I want to emphasize is that unlike a lot of other horse sports, this one really, I think, should be recognized for the welfare of the horse, the amount of attention it gives to the welfare of the horse. This sport, when you're entering the event, your horse has to be 100% drug-free. No MSM.
No bute.
No bute, nothing.
It's very common in a lot of other sports. The horses will be on bute when they compete. No bute.
What's the withdrawal time for that?
What's the what?
Withdrawal time.
Oh.
I think it's a couple of days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like 96 hours or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some have shorter ones, but to play safe, we always stop like the 3 or 5 days before, just to be sure.
And what happens is at the rides, ARC has a program in which they do random drug tests. And so I've probably been tested maybe 3 or 4 times. And they'll just come and they'll say, we want to pick the horse that comes in first, fourth, and sixth or something like that. And we'll just do a random drug test. And so that happens. So that's kind of nice because the other thing is the rides are always conducted under the what we call a control judge, which is a licensed veterinarian. It's always looking at the horse. I think it's one of the side benefits of the sport. You have your horse looked at by a veterinarian a number of times, and it's kind of nice. And they're usually very, very friendly. I don't know of none from the vet that I've had.
No?
They're usually very friendly, very informative. They'll talk about your horse. They'll make comments about it. And so I learned quite a bit from just the different vets and what they tell me about my horse. They have strict age criteria. So you have to be at least 4 years, 4 to 8 months to do a 30-mile or less ride, and 5 years to do any ride over 30 miles. And it's open to all breeds. We had Icelandic competing, I guess, right?
All kinds of breeds.
All kinds. For the welfare of the rider, juniors are considered anybody under the age of 18. That's for UMECRA. For LD and endurance, the age is 16. And in that case, they have to have the written permission of the guardian and be under a sponsor, which is somebody, an adult that's riding with that junior through the event. And helmets are required for all the juniors. And at some rides, as a matter of fact, now at all Audra-sponsored rides, which is the Arabian Horse Distance Riding Association, helmets are required. That's not true of all rides. Usually, if you look at a ride flyer, it'll tell you whether or not helmets are required. And you can use any tack, anything that you want to when you feel comfortable riding in and your horse feels comfortable. The other thing I want to mention before I turn it over to Marty is you can come to a ride and you don't have to be a member of any of these organizations. If you're entering one of the longer distance rides, you might have to pay a non-member fee of $15 to ARC. If you're entering a competitive ride, which is a UMECRA ride, you just pay the ride entry fee. There's no extra assessment. However, if you're a member, the advantages of being a member of UMECRA is that you can start to accumulate points for awards, and you can pay, I think it's $5 or something, and they'll keep track of your horse's
10.
They'll keep track of your
For
horse's
the lifetime
mileage.
of the horse.
So you do that. So that's the advantage of joining UMECRA.
And you get the newsletter, and you get the ride schedule, and you get, to be part of a fun group.
The other organization that's sponsoring this is the Arabian Horse Distance Riding Association, and you can be a member of that. And again, they also give awards at the end of the year, so you have that advantage. But the other thing is for the, I guess we're doing 3 rides this year. For the 3 rides that Audra sponsors, all of which are in Illinois, actually, you get a $5 discount on your entry fee. So there's different perks for being a member, but you don't necessarily have to be a member. So you can decide later that there's advantages, and we can talk more about that later if you have questions. So Marty's now going to talk about the different events.
Okay, Chris said that, as he mentioned, we're going to start with endurance, which is the longest event, and work backwards in terms of explaining the event. And some people get really fussy, not anyone in this group, but some people get really fussy that endurance is 50 miles or more. If you do 125-mile rides, you're still not an endurance rider until you do one 50-mile ride. Can you hear the sarcasm? But anyway, technically, according to AERC, endurance is any ride between 50 miles to 100 miles. And in endurance, and you have 12 hours to do 50 miles, you have 24 hours to do 100 miles. Okay? And it's increments, like if it's 60 miles, it's a little more than 12. I can't remember exactly. So it's increments of increasing the length of time you have and the number of miles you have. And in endurance, the horse that wins is the first horse to cross the finish line that is judged fit to continue by the veterinarian during the post-ride check. and reaches a pulse the pulse criteria is part of the fit to continue. So they have to reach a pulse criteria. Right now it's 68, but they're probably going to be lowering it to 64. And it's within an hour.
Some rides are going to a half hour.
They're going to a half hour. The rules are just changing right now. But technically, right now, your horse has to be fit to continue at the end. That means a pulse criteria of 68, unless the vet says different at the beginning of the ride, within an hour. They also have to be metabolically sound and sound at a trot. Okay? And that's how the horse is judged to be fit to continue, and that's endurance. Any questions about endurance? I'm sure you do, but just speak up if you have a question. Then the other ride that AERC recognizes is limited distance, or LD. And LD rides are between 25 miles and 35 miles. And in limited distance, it is different than endurance, not only in terms of the length, but it's also different in terms of how you finish the ride, the placings at the finish of the ride, how you place. It's not the first horse to cross the finish line that wins. It's the first horse whose pulse reaches a pulse criteria of 60 beats per minute. Okay? So so there's a lot of strategy that goes into limited distance. If you know that your horse pulse is right down, then you can trot right in, get off, take him to the vet, and if you come across the finish line first, and your horse pulse is down to 60 and is judged fit to continue, you win. But what happens is that someone will be riding their horse fast, and they will come in first and take 15 minutes to pulse down. And 3 people have passed them by then to reach a pulse criteria of 60 beats per minute. So it takes a little more knowing your horse and knowing how fast your horse will pulse down. In limited distance, again, that's basically the same criteria in terms of judging the horse, the veterinarian judging the horse at the end. The horse has to reach the pulse criteria of 60. It has to be sound both metabolically and in terms at a trot. Okay? And that's limited distance. Any questions about limited distance?
Just comment, in endurance at limited distance, you are allowed to get off and trot with your horse on the trail. You know, a lot of people at the longer distances will do that to stretch their legs and give the horse a break, so.
There are a lot of other differences in terms of crewing, too. And we're going to talk more about crewing. And there are differences in terms of how you can crew your horse. It's the same for limited distance and endurance, but it's very different for competitive. And we'll talk about those differences when we talk about crewing. But yeah, in competitive, which is what I'm going to talk about next, there's a lot more rules. And one of the rules that Julie was just alluding to, in LD and endurance, you can get off your horse, you can, go backwards, you can stand and let your horse, you can do all kinds of things. In competitive rides, which are any distance from 25 miles, and it can go up to 100 over multiple days, actually, you can only go. You have to be mounted whenever you're going forward. Okay, so you can't get off and walk your horse. Anytime you're going forward, you have to be mounted. And during the last 2 miles of the ride, there'll be a 2-mile marker out. We could have brought one, but there's usually a pie plate that says 2 miles. And after that 2-mile marker, you have to have continuous forward motion. So you can't even stop and let your horse graze. The only exception to that is if there's water. If there's natural water, if there's natural water and the horse puts his head down and wants to drink, you can never refuse a horse water. If it puts its head down, you can let it drink. You can't, however, stand there in the water going, drink, drink, drink. So anyway, those are competitive. Again, the mileage is between 25 miles and whatever. Okay. The other thing that's very different about competitive is it's not a race. LD endurance are both races. Competitive, you are judged on your horse's fitness to complete the ride in a specified amount of time. And the pace, the pace can sometimes be faster than LD. So that it isn't just a slower ride. But the pace in a competitive ride is usually between 5 and 7 miles per hour, and that includes your stop time. So, you know, if you're part of the time you're walking or part of the time you're stopping because the horse is getting a drink, you know, that gets included in that 5 to 7 miles per hour. So you're often, when you're moving, you're going faster than that to have it average out to 5 to 7 miles per hour. And as I said, it's a timed event. So let's say it's a 25-mile competitive ride and you have 4 hours to complete the ride. Or it could be 4.5, it could be, you know, they'll let you know how long you have to complete the ride. And then you have 5 minutes before and after your ideal time to come in without a point reduction, okay? If you come in any before that 5 minutes or after that 5 minutes of the ideal time, you get 1 point taken off per minute up to 55 minutes. And after that, you get disqualified. So if you're an hour late, you get disqualified, okay? So here are the strategy is to learn how to pace your horse. And it's an excellent way to start to learn how to pace your horse. Because you really do learn to go, you know.
And you're in a group.
And you're in a group of people. They send you out in groups of maybe 4, 5, or, you know, depending on how many people are entered. And you don't have to stay with the group, but often people do. And so you get to talk to other people and learn about the sport. And the horse then, when he comes in, isn't just judged on their heart rate and their metabolic condition and whether they're sound at a trot. They're also judged on a whole list of things, and we have score sheets we'll show you and show you how to judge them. They're judged on whether they have any heat, pain, or fill in their legs. They're judged on their manners. They're judged on a whole level of soundness. It's not just, yes, they're sound. They could have a few points taken off for soundness up to, I think they use this, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the soundness scale of 1 to 5, okay? But we'll show you, it's on the sheet. And a 1 or a 2, they can complete anything beyond that. A 3 and a 4, you can get mileage only, and a 5, you're disqualified. We can go over that more. But so anyway, the horse is judged on a whole lot more than just whether they have a heart rate and sound metabolical in their trot.
And one thing to add is the time penalty points are way less than coming in with a pulse that's too high or respirations that are too high. So if you think you're going to be 10 minutes late, don't worry about it. We did, I think it was 2 years ago, we did Endure, and my horse went all 3 days. We were late every day, up to 30 minutes one day, and he was high point horse through the weekend. So the time penalty points are not the end of the world.
Yeah, that's how the your horses, we'll show you the score sheet. It's complicated without seeing it. We'll go over the score sheet. But they get points taken off for a higher respiration and higher heart rate. Anything above a 9.2, they get points taken off, so that's pretty low. That's competitive. Now, we also have novice rides. Novice rides follow competitive rules. And they're 12.5 to 15 miles in length. And we do have awards at the end of the year for the top novice riders. So it's a way to get started in the sport and still go for awards. Larry's won the novice awards a couple years, didn't you?
2 seconds and a first.
2 seconds, wonderful. And it isn't just beginning riders, I should mention that. It isn't just beginning riders that ride novice. Sometimes it's riders who are coming back from an injury or their horse is coming back from an injury. In fact, I ride one and sometimes 2 of our horses in novice. Any questions? Did I forget anything else?
Well, it's competitive if you and the horse. You can't have anybody assist you in pulling your horse down or tacking up.
Yeah, that's a very controversial rule, too. But again, when we talk about crewing, we can talk about that a little bit more. But the only time you can have someone hold your horse is if you're taking a rest break, whatever that is.
Olivia has one.
Yeah.
You can still ride in groups, right?
Pardon?
You can still ride in groups, right?
Yes, oh, novice, oh, yeah, and you can ride in boots for any type of
Yes.
terrain.
Great, okay.
But in novice, we tried very hard, not all rides do this, but they should. And we tried very, very hard to be sure that every novice group has an experienced leader go out with them.
That comes like, part of our group or someone else?
We make up the group, for our novice rides, we manage the Enduro ride.
Okay.
And for our rides, what we do is we have novice leaders arranged ahead of time. Linda Rodolphi's one of our best novice leaders in the world. But she also wants to compete, so we have a hard time getting her done. And so let's say we have 3 novice leaders, and then we have 15 novice riders. And what we do is we break them up into groups of 5, and each group will go with a novice leader, and we try to divide them up according to the condition of their horse and what they want to experience. So some of those novice groups may just want to complete the 12 miles. Others may want to complete it at speed, so they're really going the speed that you would actually go in a competitive ride.
Okay, so we can like stay, if we went together to ride, we can stay together.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
To that, you don't have to stay with the novice leader, but we're trying to,
We want you to.
well, yeah, because, a lot of people, they don't really know what their horse is gonna do when you're all of a sudden in a group, and, there are 30 horses out on the trail. Horses change from what they were like at home. So that's why we like you to stay with a leader, at least the first time, so that you can, know what to expect.
Yeah, if you're doing novice, and it's your 10th novice ride that you're competing for novice points, you don't have to go everywhere, with the leader. But when you're first starting,
And you could, in theory, ride by yourself, but there's not as much fun in that.
The other thing I'd mention is that there's another event that MECR also sponsors called driving with a cart. And some rides have that, and of course, horses might need to get used to that. So if you're novice and your horse all of a sudden runs into a cart coming the other direction, that should be in a group. That follows the competitive rules too. But I think Marty went through from endurance down to competitive and novice, but what I like to do is go the other way and talk and help you see that novice kind of gets you into the sport, helps you learn to pace a horse at like 5.5 to 7 miles an hour. So you start to learn that, your horse learns not to go all out, but to pace.
to eat and drink on the trail.
Eat and drink, so that's really good to, and you learn to take care of your horse because you have to do it all by yourself. So that sort of lays a good foundation. Then you can go up to LD, which is a little bit longer distance, but there, if you notice, the criteria is getting the pulse recovery. Because you have to be the 60th into the right. So you kind of learn that, so you're getting that as your next level to get up to the endurance level where you're doing 50 miles or more. So there's sort of a progression there that you can use. And what our mentor started us in this sport, he always wanted to start us in competitive, because he thought that gave a really good foundation for your horse and good introduction to the sport.
And there's lots of people, not everyone agrees with this. Some people like to start in limited distance. Julie likes to start more in limited distance than in comp. And it depends on you and how much you know and how comfortable you feel. But as Chris was saying, our mentor, and Joanne was another one of our mentors. And a lot of people in the sport say you should have at least 2 years of comp before you go on. And you have to, people that are starting in LD already know the sport. Because sometimes if you start in LD, the horses don't ever learn to pace at a reasonable pace, and they go way too fast.